Anyway, what I'm looking at are a lot of things that I see the connections between, and I think sometimes when we're looking at nonprofits and the social economy, some of these things, some of these connections don't appear to be very clear, but there are some nice connections there. And the one word that I don't have in this title that I think is one of the main connections is the word volunteers. And we've heard earlier today about the strength of the volunteer sector in Whitehorse, and it really does stand out as having there's a lot of commitment to volunteering and a lot of people who spend a lot of time volunteering, but there's also that recognition on the part of government agencies that volunteering should be supported. So I think there's some really neat things there for us to think about. So anyway, I'm going to try and make those connections clear, and I hope that I do. The profile that's been created by CERNOCA of the social economy organizations is on the website, and I've developed this diagram from material there. The original 2008 work that was done and the updated 2010, and I believe it's still ongoing. This is just a bit of a comparison to give you an idea of how important sports and recreation and tourism are. There are a lot of organizations in the social economy that are in that general area. If we look a little more closely at the 5 regions that make up the Canadian North for the social economy of the North project, here we get the number of organizations and the percentages. Again, it's a current picture. I expect this is going to change as that profiling continues. Again, there's a lot of organizations there that we're looking at. The kinds of organizations that are included there, there's always this sort of blur between sports and recreation. I'm never really sure when something's going to be called a sport or recreation, but basically the kinds of things that we like to do in our time away from our obligations, or perhaps sometimes overlapping with our obligations if we think about family activities. It's easiest to define these things when the organizations have recreation in the name or sport in the name, but often there is overlap. The other thing that I want to point out is that these organizations tend to be extremely important in the social economy because they provide a great deal for the physical and mental health of members of the community, and so that's one of the real strengths of these organizations. They provide that physical outlet that people need, or they provide a physical outlet, not the only one, but they also provide a tremendous social connection for people, and we can't overlook that part of it. Linked to that, sports and recreation also provide a foundation that is used a lot by people in tourism, used by visitors to the community. A lot of these organizations offer opportunities not just for residents, but for people who are visiting. If we focus on tourism in the social economy, one of the ways of understanding how tourism is involved is by looking at the kinds of things that tourism organizations are trying to do. And I have an example here of a tourism organization. This is from the profile. This particular association has a strong cultural emphasis or objective, and we can see that when we look at the kinds of things that it's trying to do. So I have 2 examples here of what it's trying to do. So it's not, and this comes directly from its website, it's not enough to simply say we want to have tourism. That doesn't do enough, but it's got that social aspect as well. So these are the kinds of organizations that can be considered part of the social economy. So sport, recreation, and tourism, it's a big sector. What I've tried to do here is there's 2 things in addition to the point that it's a big sector. I'm trying to emphasize here that there's also a link between these things to the arts and culture sector. A lot of the things that tourists, for example, they like the sports and recreation, but they also draw on the features of the local community that are there for the residents. So a lot of the heritage stuff people visiting communities like. I've also, those numbers don't add up because what I've done is I've pulled out the festivals and special events. So we've got lots of festivals and special events that are organized through the social economy, and they are heritage events or special arts events, music events, sometimes sports events and recreation events. One of the big ones here, of course, was the Canada Winter Games, but there have been lots of other events that draw on what that foundation in the community is, a sports and recreation foundation or the arts and cultural foundation. For those of you who aren't very familiar with tourism, tourism will take anything that's in the local environment and in the community, and if it's interesting, they'll try to take it. Tourists and tourism organizations will try to take advantage of it in some way, and that's an important thing to think about in terms of how we look at people coming into communities, but also how the social economy, how there can be links between tourism and social economy. Another example. So when we think about tourism, we often think about it in terms of sort of the traditional community economic development. It's a way to provide jobs for people and income, diversification of the community. So it has played an important role in the North in varying degrees over the years. But one of the things that I find really interesting, this is a nice link with other aspects of the social economy, is that we also see more and more tourism focused on the kinds of things that other organizations in the social economy are interested in. And so those other organizations have, we can say, another market, another group of people to offer the product to. And so that can be quite important. And this can be particularly true when we think about cultural products that people are looking to find markets for, or food products that people would like to offer to a broader group of people. So if we think about farmers markets and so on, some of those can be very interesting to visitors to the community. They want to find out more about what's happening locally, and they go to a farmer's market and they see those food products and culture products and so on. And of course, tourists like to, or visitors like to take some things back with them, and so those farmers markets provide a good source of that sort of thing, or artisanal workshops and so on. So those are some of the interesting links. But it's important to note that not all parts of the tourism sector are in the social economy. We have to be really clear about that. The ones that are the ones that are the cooperatives and the coordinating bodies, the bodies that help groups of people get things going. And one of the reasons that cooperatives and associations seem important in tourism is a lot of tourism is small scale, and individual operators who can't do this stuff unless they get some support. And so these other groups step in. And as I said before, another link is that they can help support other social economy organizations. How much time do I have? 2 minutes? Okay. The other thing here, the foundation for a lot of this is the voluntary sector, and a lot of these organizations rely on volunteers. That's how they get things done, and volunteers do all sorts of things. We've heard about board members. We know that volunteers do skilled and unskilled work. They provide professional services, creative services, and so on. And we see this especially with sports, recreation, and special events. One of the interesting things in terms of research about volunteers is we look a lot at why people are doing things, and for a long time we talked about altruism as being why volunteers were doing things, and now we're really looking at in terms of enlightened self-interest. So people are doing things in a very focused way because they know that it's good for them and for their community, so they're trying to do it because it works for them and what they want their community to look like. So there's personal and community benefits that are coming out of it. Actually, this I'll just put this up here. This is one of the pieces of research that was done through the Social Economy Network, and there were 5 categories of things that people talked about when they were looking at what volunteering meant to them. And so these are volunteers, many of whom volunteered again and again and again in Whitehorse. This was specifically for outdoor recreation, but these were the things they talked about. And so they had this very full and complex way of understanding their volunteering. And so it's quite fascinating reading to go through. One of the key things here is in terms of what it meant for organizations, people did talk a lot about the fact that their volunteering provided financial relief for organizations. But other key things that came out, and I think these are probably the most important things for the social economy, people believed that volunteering provided a lot more control over the activity. So they could do things the way they wanted it to happen. They didn't have to listen to what the government mandate for something was. They had a lot of control over it. I think that's really important. Also important was that they were working together to achieve a goal or a group of goals that they found significant. And they also believed that by volunteering, they were strengthening the bonds they had with other community members, and they were developing the capacity of the community. So that is it.